G'day, hi, and welcome. You better g'day, hi, and welcome. Or whatever. Okay. Okay, so, yeah. Anyway, anywho, to say it properly. Uh, this is going to be a bit of a babble video. Yes, me babbling and ranting. This is a possibility. That's possible. All right, so I covered some recent stuff of the political stuff like that. So hopefully, by the time you see this video, you'll have seen that. So I covered about some of the stuff going on up here in Canada, good, bad, and gamble, and stuff going on in the States, bad, ugly, and disaster. But it does look like Trump is really frustrated. I think it's finally dawned on him that there's nothing he can do about the economy. There's nothing he can do. The Titanic has already struck the iceberg, and there's nothing he can do to save the economy. Nobody's working with him. Now, I'm very hard on Trump. You guys know that. I'm very hard on this man because of all the lying and stuff like that. Carney lies too, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, I've talked about Venezuela. I've talked a bit about Argentina and what's going on there. We'll have to keep an eye on those things for sure. But at the end of the day, the economy is in the tank. It really is. It's just a weird thing that has happened is, for example, with all these data centers, like 1,200 some odd AI data centers, they overinvested in that like ridiculously. And this is why the stock market should not be legally allowed to exist. Futures contracts should not be legally allowed to exist. You can't promise the future. Right? And the thing is that what has happened is people said, okay, put this money in, you're going to get this kind of a return, right? And it doesn't happen. And we're going to see a second .com bust that is probably going to be the thing to trigger a global collapse again, only this time about 400 times worse, maybe worse than that. I don't know what a 400 times worse than 2008 collapse looks like, but it can't look too good. Right? It's not going to look too good. And the global financial system is about to just die. And it'll take everything with it. It'll take the BRICS with it. It'll take, I know a lot of people, the BRICS are going to be the savior. No, it's all the same banksters. It's just one mob boss on this side, one mob boss on that side. Right? And people are starting to pick up on that there are no good guys. And the guy that I voted for that was supposed to do no wrong and be the good guy is, people are like, oh, look, Canada just lost 1,000 jobs in the steel working, because Carney's so bad, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no, that's just a symptom of nobody wins a trade war. Now, if you're going to pick on that, that's fine. You know what I mean? But then you have to look at the states that just lost 35,000 jobs in the hospitality and medical and all kind across the board. And a lot of it is due to these tariffs, right? So what was the tariff plan? The tariff wasn't about making America great again and diverting industry back to the United States. Trump knew that this wasn't going to work. What it is it's a way to tax your population so you could buy time for somebody to buy your debt. But China is not buying as much debt. They have to buy some, just because they're, again, the Siamese twin thing, where if you take out the U.S. economy, you basically take out the Chinese economy, and because they're so, the U.S. is the number one consumer now, or customer. Now you say, yeah, but they can make that up around the world. They can't. It's 300 million people that have an awful lot of wealth, more than most countries. So you probably need 30 countries, third world countries, just to match the consumption rates of the United States. You know what I mean? To be able, like, what people can afford. And even at that, maybe it's more like 60 countries. You know what I mean? Like that's what I mean. Like the BRICS nations, the people don't have the wealth. The corporations always make money, but you will in the BRICS nations, these are usually have and have not countries, and every country is moving into that where the middle class is being destroyed everywhere on purpose. our purchasing power has been taken away. We got gold at $4,100 or something crazy like that. We've got silver over 60. I mean, that's insane. Now, I don't know what it is today, but it's just recently went over those numbers, which is telling you that your purchasing power is running away at a record pace. You're losing purchasing power, which means everything gets more expensive. And that's why I've been calling the Black Christmas, because I think what we're going to see is that, like, okay, yes, the Christmas shopping might not change that much. People go out and they buy gifts and whatever. Okay. But what's the debt? Like, how much of that? Almost all of it is going to be credit card debt. Almost all of it. Why? Because go into a Walmart. You know, the cheapest stuff for everyday low prices. Remember when you used to be able to go into Walmart with $25 and come out with bags of stuff? Now it's not, right? Well, why? Because, well, Walmart was invested in the same way like the tech companies were. It's like, okay, it was a brick and mortar. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to open up these chains of stores. We're going to bankroll them so that we can undercut everybody's labor, undercut everybody's profits, put them out of business, and then once they're all the competition's out of business, the mom and pop shops, we'll then hike the price up to what we need to recoup what we invested. And that's how it's done. That's called monopoly, right? And that's how you get the monopolies. Problem is that the cheap stuff is, like, the age of cheap stuff is going away. And that's not a bad thing. It's just it's going to be a painful transition to supply chain 2.0, right? Which supply chain 2.0 is not going to be the cheapest, most efficient stuff from the cheapest, lowest bidder, the cheapest stuff from the lowest bidder for everyday low prices. It's just not going to work. You actually have to have a profit margin. You're going to have redundancy in your delivery system. You're going to have stable partnerships and multiple diversification in your partnerships. Because if you don't, maybe one day a president wakes up and says, I'm just going to tariff the fucking world. And penguins in Norway are going, what the fuck just happened? I'm a penguin. Why are you tariffing me? You can't make this up. Argentinian bananas. Why is Trump tariffing Argentinian bananas? I mean, the United States doesn't grow bananas. Why would you tariff stuff you can't get domestically? Because it's a tax. It's just like, okay, just tariff everything, see how much we make, and that'll give my tax break promise, and then I'll pass the economic problem to the next guy, right? Which is not going to be conservative. I think at this point, if you look at the rioting around the world of the Gen Z, we're going communist, guys. We're going extreme communist or extreme fascist. We're not. That's where we're going. No, Gen Z is not going to save the day. It's going to be Gen Alpha or Gen Beta, which Gen Beta is just being born now. Like they're little babies right now. But those are going to be the strongmen. That's where you're going to get the new Saddam Husseins, the new, Stalins, etc. The new Mao. They're coming out of because that's what these kids are growing up with. Like Gen Z is growing up with comply or die. You know what I mean? And the thing is that we're caught between two realities, right? The social construct versus nature, right? And there's two types of people in this. The people, and it's not necessarily right wing versus left wing, although the right wing tends to be more in the reality and the stoicism of here's the world for what it is, where the social construct that everything is imaginary and it's what you think it is the left, right? That this is not new. This is since the dawn of time. And the acceptance of reality, whether you are hardcore partisan normie right or hardcore partisan normie left, you're blindsided by the fact that there are no good guys. They're all mob bosses fighting at the top. There's not a single world leader that is doing right by its people, with one caveat. It might be, I'm hoping it's going to be, but the man did something really, really horrible to do the right thing. And that is Javier Milei. Now, I still have to do more work looking at Argentina, and I know people will come at me, Reg, Argentina is a disaster. You are correct. It is a disaster. But is it the disaster that they need to right the ship? You know what I mean? Like, no surgeon wants to cut off somebody's arm or leg. You know what I mean? But you got gangrene. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to do that, right? But that's where we're at, right? So we'll have to keep an eye on Argentina. Was the collapse of Argentina basically, and again, if Javier Milei is, like, again, I don't really particularly like the man. This whole, we're going to, take the chainsaw and cut the slash and do austerity, which, again, conservative governments, when they cut the government too fast, right? What tends to happen is they create either a recession or, in this case, a depression, right? Talking about Javier Milei, you can't just lay off. You can't balance your budget overnight without creating like extreme turmoil, which has lots of unintended consequences. So right now, you can go look into what the poor people in Argentina are doing, right? But the thing is did we just see the beginnings of the second 2008 collapse where, okay, well, here, Argentina, you collapse your currency, will you buy our debt, for $20 billion, we'll float your economy with 20 billion US dollars as backing for the Argentinian dollar, peso. Well, it's now the Argentinian dollar, I guess. And we'll go from there. But you're taking our debt, right? So that'll be the death of Argentina if they take the debt. If anybody takes the U.S. debt, it's the death of their country, right? And this is the death of the petrodollar is a plague right now. And this is what a lot of countries are trying to avoid, Canada being one of them. We're stuck on the petrodollar system, and we're a tumor where the Canadian tumor is attached to the American tumor, meaning our economies are so intertwined, they're like tumors. You can't remove one without killing the other. And Americans still haven't woken up to that reality that if you take away the 50+% of Canada's economy, you're going to lose jobs in the States, right? So if you destroy Canada, you're not going to get the 50th state, you're just probably going to get war. But even if you don't get war, you're going to get, you'll never have a trade partner again with Canada. Like you've screwed us enough as it is with this tariff thing, right? And again, a lot of people still believing the hype of Trump's like, oh, Canada's screwing us, Canada's screwing us. And again, I go through it I think I went through it fairly detailed now that, look, don't take my word for it. Just go look at every claim Trump makes and then go look at, okay, wow, what are the nuances and details of what he's talking about? And it's just buckshot. It's or birdshot. It's just, fire it, see what it hits, right? And the idea is that the smokescreen of that is to convince people that Canada's bad. This is why you're suffering, right? Because they've taken our jobs. But the thing is that's not the truth. The truth is Canada and the United States have played the exact same game, and that was the NAFTA game, right? So now Trump's out there saying, okay, remember when he was like, let's get rid of NAFTA, we'll bring in the USMCA. And he did. And then we'll, Kuzma USMCA, right? Now he's talking about getting rid of that. Well, if I can't make a deal with Canada, I'll get rid of it all. And I'm like, okay, because what Trump has realized is that he can't outplay Carney. Carney knows how to kick the can down the road and just stonewall him, right? Because it's like there's no point in making a deal with a guy that doesn't want to make a deal. Trump wants to take over Canada for our minerals, resources, the same way he wants to do in Venezuela. The only thing is his desperation hasn't hit the, okay, well, we're gonna go after Venezuela and we're gonna start a war with them and we're gonna bomb them into oblivion, take their resources, and we'll at least get the potash, the minerals, and the oil out of it. Then we can cut off Alberta and Saskatchewan and bleed out the Canadians and cripple their oil, gas and oil, and cripple their potash so that they collapse, and then they'll say, make us the 51st state because Carney's so bad, right? But it's not working. It's not working. Canada was supposed to just fold. We didn't. That said, we are in the race of our lives to outrun the drowning man, that is the United States. The only saving grace the Americans have is that they have the biggest economy in the world. But they're losing jobs at alarming rates. Alarming rates. The foreign workers program has failed there. It's failing here, but we still have a little bit of room to wiggle. Not that I want these temporary foreign workers, send them home. We don't need them. We're definitely not going to want these people during the collapse. But my hunch is we'll see, like we saw in 2008 with Ireland, when the Irish were like going through their sock drawers trying to find actual physical cash because of the collapse. All the immigrants that came in for free stuff started leaving. Right, we're going to see that in the West, which is going to be a good thing. Maybe that's the strategy. Okay, if we collapse the system, okay, it's going to hurt our indigenous population, but all the immigrants are just going to leave for free welfare over there somewhere, right? But that's not going to work either because it's going to go global. But the thing is that the United States, okay, is in a very, very bad position because of Trump has to come up with $3 trillion just to keep the government running. And he's made no serious attempts at even trying to seriously balance the budget. And where he has tried, all the Doge layoffs are being overturned by these activist judges, which is the most treasonous thing you can possibly imagine. These judges need to be basically, give them a trial and then execute them for treason. They're using lawfare, right? Lawfare should be a capital punishment, a corporal punishment and capital punishment for using lawfare. I'm all for the death penalty for judges and lawyers that have let these monsters out on the street that are whatever. So if they can't say, hey, look, I'm just following the law the way the law is, it's the guys in the Congress that you need to go after, not me, Mr. Judge. Look, I'm doing my job. Here's what I'm legally allowed to do. Here's what I'm not legally allowed to do. And under the law, I can't prosecute these people. You got to change it. Okay, fine. If they could do that. But if they're just like, okay, well, I have to stick it to Trump at the expense of the general public and it's lawfare, then no. You have to, these people need to be, held to account, right? But the problem is there's no accountability in government anywhere. There's no rule of law. There's no rule of law. I've been saying this for a while. Where okay, if you go and steal a chocolate bar or a car or something, like that, yeah, you'll go to jail, or you beat your wife or whatever. Yeah, you're going to go to jail for that. Okay, there's rule of law for that. But embezzle billions of dollars, steal billions of dollars, do genocidal wars, illegal wars, war crimes, against speedboats and 1,500 miles off your coast, or 1,500 kilometers off your coast. Whatever the distance is. Like, why are you in somebody else's water killing their citizens? Oh, but they're drug dealers. How do you know? What drugs? Who did you kill? I don't know. Who are the men that were in the water that you just shot? From the warship, right? And what, this captain doesn't have any discernment to say, hey, no, we can't follow that order. These men, these men are prisoners of war. While we're doing, you're already illegally invading another country's territory, right? But it's not about going after drug. If you believe that, no, you have no clue what's going on. No, it's about Venezuela selling the oil outside the petrodollar because the Venezuelans know that they can't appease the American system because, and the people, their only saving grace. Look, I was listening to a guy in not Chile, where was it? Bolivia, I think he was in, talking about Argentina and stuff like that, and Venezuela. And he says, "Look, South America is going to rally around the Venezuelan flag as soon as the Americans attack it, right? Like with severe attacks." But he says, look, the BRICS nations don't fear, China. They fear America, right? They fear the petrodollar. They know that, again, it's like what Max Kaiser talked about back in 2010 when he quoted, the Americans have a debt and debt-based economy. You take petrodollar or we drop democracy JDAMs on you, right? And that is no truer word I don't think has ever been spoken. The problem is if you stop the war machine, okay, and stop killing people and stop the wars, the collapse of the weapons industry it's a major contributor to the economy, right? It would collapse the petrodollar. If you know, basically default on the debt, it collapses the world economy. Right? This is what the BRICS are trying to get out ahead of. Now, mind you, you have to understand the people that started the BRICS are the same people that created our shitty system, right? It's the same. It's just like I say, mob bosses fighting. It's these Goldman Sachs guys and Rothschild banking guys switched over to the Chinese side. This has been I've been talking about this since 2012. Right? So the banksters are the evilest people on the planet. These people are all the pain and suffering. Well, not all the pain and suffering. Most of the pain and suffering is a byproduct of their bad policies. Modern monetary theory, print to oblivion. Quantitative easing, modern like what the fuck is quantitative easing? Like what kind of word shit salad is that, right? It's basically we're going to print our way out of the problem, but then you find out you can't. So what can Trump do? Well, he can start a war because when all else fails, they take you to war, like Gerald Celente says. People have overinvested in really bad investments, and it's something that has happened. Now, mind you, we can reverse some of this. We do have a little time left, probably not years, but things like if you were smart, okay, like Javier Milei just probably went for broke, said, look, I'm just going to collapse everything. I'll back it with the US dollar, but then if the US dollar collapses on top of that, Argentina would be destroyed. Like it's already in a massive depression. It would be completely destroyed, right? And many other countries would go down with it. It will hit Canada. But getting back to what I was saying, Canada is the tumor to the United States' tumor, right? Our economies are so intertwined. What Trump's plan was, okay, is here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the manufacturing back to the United States, which the manufacturing in the States is something like 11% of their economy. That's it. Here in Canada, it's probably around the same or whatever. But the difference is the American economy is predominantly run by giant corporations. Think like Monsanto, Pfizer, all those things. Walmart being the biggest. The Waltons are the wealthiest family in the United States, right? And they own Walmart. And then you got your tech giants and all that. Now the tech thing is a major problem because the overinvestment in that, like these tech giants, like Apple is the most the highest. How do you put this? They're the company that's worth the most in the world is Apple, right? Or at least in the United States, they're the most highest earning, whatever. So they take in a lot of money, they move a lot of money, but are they making any profit? There's lots of investment, venture capitalists, and this is where the death of the brick and mortar. This is where NAFTA had the unintended consequences, right? Where the stock market started to really become the thing, futures contracts, stuff like that. All these things. So you started going from business owners and people like your Henry Fords, if you want to use an example, or Harley Davidson brothers, where you basically you go out, you build the brick and mortar store, right? And what you have is what you have, and you just build it over time, generation after generation, right? And that creates generational wealth, but you also have something that is tangible, solid, it's an actual asset, right? Whereas the billionaire class now didn't make their money that way. Most of them, they made it through the stock market of, okay, well, you say this company's worth this much, okay, and I'll buy it. It's the same thing with Bitcoin and all that. People will buy whatever they believe it's worth, right? But at the end of the day, what is Bitcoin? It's nothing. Like Argentina is trying to move to a digital currency, and like we're all on this, like Chinese social credit score system that they want, but they have to do a massive human purge because there's just like this is what the whole basic universal income thing is about and all that. Problem is basic universal income. Like, sure, as soon as they offer it, if you're eligible for it, just take it, but use that time with that money to go out and buy freaking food, things to grow your own food. Like we are going back to a home. Like the survivors are going to be in a homestead and small communities. You're going to see like tribalism like you've never seen before. And you're going to see a return to the extended family. Never mind the nuclear family. The extended family is about to really, really take place. And you're going to see a lot of culture clashing in this. Because what happens is when we start collapsing in a noticeable where the normie can, like even the normies in 2008, a lot of people still had a lot of government workers had their jobs over here in the West, so they really didn't feel it. Why? Because the crash was diverted to Europe, but Europe still hasn't recovered from that in most of the countries there. So now what are they going to divert all the crash to the South America now? They got no money. You know what I mean? They can't bail you out. So the world can't bail out the United States anymore. It's way above its means, right? It's trillions of dollars in debt, nearly $40 trillion net, $38 to $40 trillion in debt. And then all these unfunded liabilities with the wars, everything like that. Like, it's going to kill millions. Like, we could see, just in this collapse alone, probably about 80 million to 150 million Americans just die from poverty. Like, it's going to be brutal. And this comes on again, like I say, well, Trump attacking the food supply, his administration. When the food shortage hits, we're already noticing the price pickup in inflation. But is that just because the currency is coming down, or is there actual physical shortages, which means starvation? We're talking Holodomor Light 2.0 in the United States. No one's going to believe it's happening until they see it happening. And even then, it's going to be beyond disbelief because that can't happen here. This is a first world country. No, it's not. Canada and the United States are second world countries. There are no first world countries on the planet right now. Like in relative to what? Yes. But as far as, like, let's take Japan. Okay, Japan, a very, very, very interesting country, very technologically advanced. They have everything a modern society and more can have. Like, they're very, very advanced. Singapore, all these places, same thing. But they have a huge problem. The cost of living is so high that it's killed relationships. It's killed ambitions of being able to do stuff, right? Overpopulation and a high cost. Like, men can't afford to get into relationships because it's too expensive, right? The same thing has happened in Western countries. That's why we have the loneliness epidemic on top. But that has a lot of cultural stuff in it. The death of the nuclear family. A lot of people say we need to go back to the nuclear family. No, we need to go back to the extended family. The nuclear family was already the deterioration. It was that wasn't a step forward from the extended family. It was a step backwards. And the thing is that getting back to what I was saying, like Trump, when he called, like, he saw Canada in a vulnerable situation where the idea was, okay, if we can get the resources from Canada, at least when we collapse, we'll have that. So the best thing I can do is threaten to destroy their economy economically, or we're going to go to war with you. This is basically what Trump is saying, his own words, right? So we're going to attack them economically for now. That's exactly what Trump has said, right? And he said, well, what it's going to take, recently he said, what it's going to take over Canada, a lot of people, probably Americans, won't be able to stomach that. So what does that mean? Well, that means he wants to roll tanks into Canada to steal our stuff. This is why Trump went, look, I want strong borders. Elect me and I'll stop the border crisis. Which on the southern border he's done pretty good. He's got a long way to go, but he's done pretty good. But on the northern border, it's like something. Oh well, that's just an arbitrary line. That's really our territory. That's really our water and gas and oil up there, and minerals and potash and all these things. Why the Canadians controlling our resources, right, on their territory? How dare they? They should become the 51st state if they know what's good for them, right? Now, the good news is 80% of Americans are completely against this, and the the remaining 18% are like, well, if the Canadians want to become a part of the United States, we'd love to have them, only if they came willingly and they actually wanted to do that. Canadians, like 80 to 90%, have politely, said thanks but no thanks. We're fine. Yeah, we got our problems, but we're fine. And then 2% of Americans are like, yeah, fuck, let's invade Canada. Fuck you guys. yeah, fuck you guys. Yeah, fuck you, make me. That's the Canadian answer there. Maple Leaf up. Here we go. Fixed bayonets over the top. Here we go. Yeah. But the thing is that Trump wanted to just shut off our economy. Okay, now he knew that would have a little bit of disruption, but what he didn't realize was that, again, you have a tumor grafted to a bigger tumor, right? You can't just kill the Canadian economy without knocking out 20 to 30% of your economy. It's an impossibility at this point. It would take decades to be able to shut the Canadian economy off, just because we're so intertwined. And industry after industry after industry that was all for this, yeah, let's do the tariffs and bring the jobs and manufacturing back to the United States. We're all for this until the tariffs started hitting. It's like, what do you mean? Like to make one vehicle, the parts cross the border like 8 times, and it gets tariffed every time it goes across the border. And the parts from that part from that part. It's just this big chain reaction of tariffs. So suddenly now you got a vehicle that's worth $250,000. You got a compact ship box car worth $250,000. You can't sell it for that, right? It's like, so that means the company's either going to take massive losses, like they're damned, or they're going to need bailouts. That's the only way. The big, again, I'm waiting to see, there was like a $10,000 or $20,000 or $15,000 hike on almost every pickup truck across the board just from these tariffs early on. And the tariffs haven't really hit yet because the batches, you build vehicles in batches, right? You build a few thousand, then you put them out to market. So every batch is just going to get crazy more expensive. And this takes time to, like a year, 2 years before you really see the damage of this. So even if Trump were to completely shut off the throttles on the tariffs tomorrow morning, the damage is going to be done for the next 5 years at least, on top of everything else that's going wrong, right? So the Canadian economy, so if the Americans say, okay, well, we won't cut off what the Canadians are buying from us because that's half their economy and that would destroy too many jobs in the United States. And this is what I'm trying to get Americans to understand. I'm pretty sure a lot of them already understand this, but a lot of them that still follow like Fox News or whatever and all the propaganda channels, CNN, Fox News, it doesn't matter. They're all owned by the same people. It doesn't matter if they're controlled opposition or not. But what you're going to find out is that, okay, well, why doesn't Trump just say, hey, we're not buying anything else from Canada? We don't need anything from Canada. There's nothing they have that we want, that we can't supply ourselves. And then you find out that's not true. You guys, you don't have the potash. Even if you did, it would take you 10 to 20 years to build a potash mine. Picture 2 twin towers upside down in the ground. Like potash mines are. There's only 4 places in the world you can get that. The number one is Russia or China, and then I think it's Russia. Then it's either us or Venezuela. These are the only places you're going to get the natural potash, right? For the fertilizer. So 80% of the fertilizer going into the United States comes from Canada, and that has a 10 or 15% tariff on it. So how many farmers just went out of business on that or just didn't bother farming? It's like with all these input costs, there's just no money in it. Selling off their farm so Bill Gates can buy it up with the real estate deal that Trump has probably done with. Again, I would love to know what Bill Gates and Trump are talking about, because right after that, Trump comes out, yeah, we're going to be boosting Pfizer, we're going to be boosting, Monsanto, so that means all these farmers are going to be bought out. But you're going to get a pitchfork revolution out of this for sure. So let's say Trump says, okay, well, we're just not going to buy that 2% of our rounding error trade that we do with Canada. We're just not going to do that anymore. That's it. Well, right away, if you cut off the trade, it's not how much we're trading. I remember Sticks Hecken and Hammers going, it's a rounding error. One guy after another, American after another. Oh, what we buy from the Canadians, 2% of our economy, that's a rounding error. Oh yeah, there'll be some job losses, but yeah, I'm willing to take that hit. No, you are not. And I'll tell you why, because it's not the 2% that you need to look at. It's what's in that 2%. That 2% covers about 20 to 30% of your economy. It's steel, it's gas, it's oil, it's electricity. The electricity you guys buy from us is a big part of your grid. The Eastern Seaboard would be, again, Ontario alone, 6 million businesses and households. If you cut that off, just 1 week of that being cut off would just probably put you guys in a recession bordering depression. Just to cut off that much manufacturing. How many people die in the hospitals? You know what I mean? That's what I'm getting at, right? Now, cut off Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, BC, Ontario, and of course, Quebec, the biggest supplier of electricity, I believe, to the United States, pretty much the Eastern Seaboard. Pretty much all the northern United States would be out of power, right? And what happens when you cut the power off in Detroit, right? You ain't don't worry about the auto industry. You won't have one. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're talking instant depression overnight. And not recoverable for at least 30 to 50 years, because it takes time to build shit. You know what I mean? Carney up here is trying to pivot away from the U.S. economy by extreme diversification. And he's doing okay. It's just the question is he going to be able to outrun the collapse of the United States? I don't know if we are going to be able to do that, but all the partnerships that this man is making now might set us up, in 5 to 10 years to becoming a Canadian superpower, right? If we don't go to war with the Russians. Right? That's why all these leaders want to go to war with the Russians. Bad economies. The banksters want it. And the thing is that Trump is sitting there, now he's bashing on Somalians or whatever. Okay, fine. He's not wrong about what he's saying about those immigrants. I'm not saying every Somalian person is bad or whatever. I'm not saying that. But there's a big problem there. You got these people that came in, they go on welfare, and that's all they do. And we have the same problem up in Canada. You call that out, and it's oh, you racist bigot, how dare you? But look, the stats up here in Canada, and it's probably going to be similar to the States and all over the West, is all the immigrants that came in around 2015, 85% of them didn't work for the first 3 years, and maybe 45% after 3 years would have some sort of a job. But because it's probably an underemployment job, they're working class poor, right? Think temporary foreign workers or whatever, your H-1B visas down there in the States. And the thing about that is the Americans can't play that game anymore because they have more people than jobs. So the only thing they can do is fire actual, real Americans and replace them with this foreign worker replacement population, which is starting to have, people are going to take to the streets on this, right? And the idea of, and again, up here in Canada, we're still doing that. That's the bouncing ball of the Canadian economy, where we're not in recession. The GDP numbers go up a bit, they come down. The reason why they're doing that is because of the immigrants coming in. So you get 60,000 immigrants come in 1 week, and a couple of weeks later, they're working in, some temporary foreign worker program, undercutting Canadian labor. Your GDP numbers go back up, and then until the next batch come in, then they go down. But the thing is you're going to run out of jobs. You know what I mean? Like you're just going to run out of jobs, and no matter how greedy the corporations are. And look, capitalism, look, communism doesn't work. We know communism doesn't work whatsoever. Capitalism, to kind of like paraphrase Churchill, what he said about democracy, like democracy is the worst form of government. Unfortunately, it's the best one we got. Well, you could say the same thing about capitalism. It's, you know, the worst form of doing business. Unfortunately, it's the best one we got. But what has NAFTA done? Well, NAFTA has built the Chinese juggernaut that we're going to have to deal with. No, China will not have the power to basically be the next world. Like the pivot to Asia is not going to happen the way the George Soroses and the Rothschilds of the world want. Just because what it takes to keep China going. Like they've got way too big of a population; they can't feed themselves. If you collapse the United States, you will collapse China. It's because look, other China is not stupid. The Chinese are not stupid, and I don't have anything against the Chinese as people, but you definitely don't want the communist Chinese government running the world. Our world leaders are Maoist in nature. In the West, they love authoritarianism. They love the Chinese model. Yeah, Justin Trudeau, remember him going, "Oh, I wish I could just do what Xi does." You know, like I admire his dictatorship. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, considering he's probably the bastard child of Fidel Castro, no wonder he, you know what I mean. But anyway, the thing is that China's problem is how do you find the wealth in the clientele that you could get for get from the United States, right, and the rest of the West. Like if you collapse the United States is going to try to divert that collapse back to Europe again. Problem is Europe can't do round two like they did in round one in 2008, right? So there's no place to divert this debt to, and the Chinese aren't buying. But the thing is if you kill American buying power, you kill China because what's the point of being the world's manufacturer when nobody's buying anything, right? And this is something you're seeing around the world is that people are buying less, right? And they're buying less American for sure. And it's not even due to the fact that people are, with the fuck Trump economy, where they're just not buying American because fuck Trump, right? And the boycotts and stuff like that. That's part of it. That's not helping. But it's just they got no money. They got no money. So all this cheap junk from China suddenly becomes irrelevant, right? It doesn't matter if it's a good price. If nobody's got any money, no one's going to be buying it. They're going to be more concerned about paying their rent and buying food and medications and stuff that's more important. So the silver lining of this cloud is consumerism will become more frugal and less wasteful. The terrifying fact of that is that everybody's in survival mode. Now, China can, tap into its own population for wealth. Problem is they've got, like a multi-tier society there where like the Chinese kind of decide what you do at from birth. Like if you're going to be working in a factory, or if you're going to be in the upper echelons of society, right? And there's only so many upper echelons of society, like as they say, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, that you can handle before things go awry. And the problem is the people on the bottom rung in these factories, they got factories where they work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they got fences around the roof so that people don't jump off committing suicide there. That's a big problem in China. That's not living. That's just a form of slavery, right? And the thing is that makes their corporations billions, but you need wealth to sustain that. You need, like when we gave China the world, so to speak, a lot of people probably didn't realize this was what we're seeing now has been planned out since at least the 90s. That this is how we're going to switch the economy to this digital economy or whatever. Now, at the time, the internet wasn't really a thing for the common people. Like there was VPNs and stuff like that, and computers and been around since the 1950s, but The internet, as we know it, didn't really come in until about 1995, and even at that, its potential wasn't even close to realized. Like dial-up was slow. It was good for moving numbers. You know what I mean? It did make managing things a little bit easier. You could use spreadsheets to balance your books and stuff like that. And then you got chat boards, and then you started getting web pages where people could start, here's my recipe for this, here's my manual for this, here's my how to this, here's my opinion on this, here's my writings, whatever. And then you got your MySpaces, the early stages of Facebook and YouTube and stuff like that around 2007. And, like 10 years of internet, the world wasn't that far off the mark from the 1980s, right? But now we're so far off the mark because, again, the death of the brick and mortar store, everything going online, the Internet of Things, one world currency idea is still, that's what the CBDCs are all about. It's like, okay, in 2008, they tried to bring in the one world currency. It failed. It failed majorly. They couldn't do it. And now you've got half the world in one empire, the Eurasian Pacific Empire versus the Anglo-American Empire, going, we're going to join the BRICS nations, but they're going to run into the same problems in about probably 20 to 50 years, probably sooner, just because these countries are already, in extremely impoverished countries. So any positive things you hear about the BRICS right now is very similar to what you heard about NAFTA when it came out. Oh, we got so many jobs. We can outsource the jobs and offshore our manufacturing and just go to a service sector economy. Okay, fine, everybody did that. But now we build nothing in our country. And when you build something in a country, and this is one area where Carney doesn't really kind of get it up here in Canada. Yes, I like the fact that you're diversifying trade and stuff like that, but he's not hardening the system. Now, Doug Ford's sort of getting the idea that, hey, look, I got to build a grid on my side of the border, or Ontarians and all other Canadian provinces are not going to be able to get Ontario Hydro, right? Because our grids are intertwined back and forth across the U.S. Canadian border. Like you have all these sub power stations to line level, right? The power, so you don't just blow up a city block with too much power going to it. And that takes time to build that stuff. And you got to do it while the currencies are devaluing. Yes, you have low interest rates so you can borrow more money. But the thing is if you're borrowing for anything other than infrastructure, when you do collapse, at least, same thing happened in the Soviet Union. The oligarchs come in and they buy up the resources, pennies on the dollars. And that's what happened, basically over and over and over again. And that's what's going to happen now, is basically the United States is going to be bought out by like China and the whatever. Like the Chinese have been trying to buy up as much of Canada as possible, right? They own our ports. They own pretty much all the U.S. ports. They own like they're one of the second largest buyer of farmland in the United States is the Chinese. Number one is Bill Gates. Number three is us, us Canadians buying up, farmland. What I think that's mostly about is just the farms that, crisscross the border. And it's probably just, okay, well, it's a Canadian-owned farm. And then the guy beside him sells, okay, well, I'll take that farm too, right? But what's going to happen is that the people they're rejecting this, right? Gerald Celente said something really interesting on Canadian Prepper the other night about how, we're going to go into this crazy digital economy, authoritarian stuff, because the younger generation is just so fixated on technology, right? They can't walk around without the phone, right? I'm going to push back a bit on that. Not that I don't think the man is smart. Not that I don't think the man's trends are really good. He's usually pretty darn accurate. But I'm saying, no, the necessity is not going to allow for that. It just really isn't. Because, look, some of your society is going to be completely transhumanist. That's coming. But you can't survive in a transhumanist state. You'll be so depressed even if you don't actually incorporate the technology into your body like a cyborg. That's already, like people like, have a chip I think it's in Sweden, whatever, where, it's like you don't carry your ID, you just have like a little chip in your hand now, right? Mark of the beast, I don't know, you tell me, right? But a handful of people can do that. It's going to be a handful of people working in like certain industries. The masses won't be able to do that. It's like basic universal income. It's a nice pipe dream, but how are you going to pay for it? There's no way to pay for that. Oh, we'll just keep printing. Yeah, okay. Uh, Take your entire. What happens if you were to say, okay, everybody, we got 40 million people in Canada, plus illegals, probably 40 some odd million. And I said, look, we'd hit about 44 million, 42 to 44 million before Canada collapses. And we're getting there. We're getting there, right? We're not in collapse mode right now. The Americans are worse off than us because we're diversifying trade and stuff like that. And we were worse off to begin with. Despite even under Trudeau, as bad as Trudeau was, and again, I still see Americans going on about, oh, look at all the authoritarianism up in Canada and stuff like that. Take a look at we're all in the same boat, guys. It's not a competition. You know what I mean? But you have to look at your own. Like if you think that you still have freedom of speech in the United States, you don't. It's just it's a little more progressed in the UK and Canada and Australia and New Zealand and stuff like that, and Germany and France. But you're also seeing the uprisings, follow suit, right? So the culture clash that we're seeing is going to be basically birthed on the 10th Crusade and the 110th expulsion of the Jews, right? We're living that right now. Whether I'm not calling for it, I'm saying this is what I predicted, because when you looked at the bigger picture, connected the dots, and just kind of like 2 plus 2 is going to equal 4, this is where we're going. So the only way out for the world leaders is either basic universal income that we can't afford whatsoever in any country. Yes, every socialist. Well, why don't we do that? Well, how are we going to pay for it? Well, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. This is why we're in the position we're in right now, is because all these people that voted for people to give them free stuff, you're finding out there's no such thing as free. It's pay me now, pay me later. Stefan Molyneux was saying that, like this is what the economy is: pay me now, pay me later. So you could vote for all kinds of free stuff. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. And usually when you do, it's kind of like you got a bit of the monkey's paw effect going on, where you make a wish and you get your wish, but it doesn't turn out exactly the way you want. Meaning you get all this free stuff, but you get like in the Soviet Union or Cuba. Yeah, like in Cuba, they still have like food for the people, but you might get like one sandwich and you have to divide it with like 8 people. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, yeah, we fed you. What are you talking about? Here, one French fry each. There you go. That's Cuba, right? Cuba is in a disaster right now. Why? It's a communist country. Right? So with all the younger generation, one half screaming for that or fascism, like reasonability is just leaving people, where it's like, okay, you're just up against such hyper radical people. You can't talk to them. You can't reason with them. They're basically loyalists to their ideas, right? And the globalists, they are insane, completely, utterly insane and evil. They don't care who dies. A lot of them have a Leninist kind of mindset. Len wrote in his memoirs that when 20 million Russians died or whatever, that, oh, this was going to be great for the economy. You get rid of all these people, all the useless eaters. And that's the way our world leaders view us, right? And the thing is Trump is no different. Carney's no different. Xi is definitely no different. Putin's no different. Zelensky's no different. Starmer's no different. These people hate us. is the simplest way to put it. These people fucking hate us. Now, I have said some positive things about some leaders, but none of them are good per se. Now, provincial leaders and state leaders might be some exceptions to the rule. For example, Danielle Smith over there in Alberta, she's pulling her. She if she were to run for prime minister, I would vote for her. Not because I think she's perfect, but She's a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways. Again, not perfect. Doug Ford, not perfect, but knows how to play the game, right? Doug Ford fights dirty. You know, he's been fighting dirty against the American administration for sure. But he knows how to, like, okay, if you're going to go hyperbolics, I'm going to go double hyperbolics on you, right? And it freaks that he knows it freaks them out because Doug Ford, love him or hate him, understands the power of Ontario, right? Ontario is the largest economy in Canada. Alberta is the largest per capita economy in Canada, where Alberta punches way above its weight by about 10 or 15%. And then Quebec, I think, is number two, um, because it's just because there's like most of the population is in Quebec and Ontario, just because this is where the country was pretty much founded, is on the East Coast, right? Starts in Gaspé, and then we worked our way. Like, people didn't make it out to BC for like a long time, um, like not until after like Lois and Clark and stuff like that, right? Northwest Passage stuff. Uh, and like the Franklin expedition, it tried as well. You know what I mean? Like that was to navigate the Arctic, trying to find trade routes to India, and all that stuff took a long time. The man who looked at stars was the first guy to make it across the country, right? And the thing is about that is that when you understand how the country's demographics, most everybody's in the southern spot of the country, and there's a little bit in the north, but you understand that Canada has more resources than any other country in the world, and most countries combined. You can understand the threat we're under. If yes, the world likes us as people. They more the rest of the world views Canada more positively than the United States, right? Right now, the most hated country on the planet is Israel, just because of the genocide they're doing, right? And the thing about that is that it has consequences. But the thing is that if you're thinking that our number one ally and neighbor is still our number one ally and neighbor, you have to understand their administration is not. The United States wants to destroy Canada the same way it wants to destroy Iran, the same way it wants to destroy Venezuela. It just wants to do it in a different way. That's all. Just, okay, well, we're going to take them out economically so we can buy up, collapse their economy so our oligarchs, like in the Soviet Union, can go in and buy up Canada pennies on the dollar. That's the goal. And then we'll annex it after that, one way or the other. That's kind of, if you're trying to war game this out, that's what Trump is trying to do. But the thing is Trudeau in the 11th hour didn't cave. He didn't just say, okay, because Trump was never like all these people, like these normie kind of conservatives sitting there go, why can't Carney make a deal? Carney has told you why he can't make a deal with Trump. The Trump administration does not want to really make a deal. There's no there. There's a lot of political posturing. Carney's not perfect. I get that. But he also understands that you can't appease Trump because that's not Trump's goal. Trump's goal is to take over Canada. Carney has said this plain English. Trump has said this plain English. You know what I mean? No, we're going to get it. We're going to get Canada. Like he's sure of himself, right? But the thing is that he's coming up to, like he's in the Emperor Nero mode where, okay, Constantinople is burning around you. What are you going to do? Play your fiddle? Bitch about Somalians in your country? I don't know. What are you going to do? Right? It's like, okay, you got to do something. I don't know what you're going to do. Like, are you going to cut the military? Are you going to cut pensions? Are you going to cut the food stamps? Are you going to cut the foreign aid to Israel? Are you going to cut the war to Ukraine? Are you going to cut, what are you going to cut? Like, what's going to take to balance the U.S. economy? That's something nobody looks at, right? You'd say, Reg's right back at you. What's it going to take to balance the Canadian economy? $78 billion is what's going to take to balance the Canadian economy. $78 billion. So who do you think is closer to a balanced budget? Carney, who is trying to outrun the collapse of the United States. Good luck. I don't think we're going to make it, but maybe we get lucky. Who knows? Uh, like again, I like the idea he's diversifying trade, but you have to understand this collapse is going to go global. You better be helping out small businesses in Canada. That should be the number one priority. But one big thing that we have done, which is going to just naturally create more business for us, is breaking down trade barriers from province to province, like Cardi says. One big mega economy in Canada instead of 13 small ones, right? So what does that look like? Well, that looks like an extra $200 billion a year for Canada, which those profits circulating in the economy could probably stop some of the money printing. And maybe if we're lucky, in 10 years, we balance our budget with the least amount of pain. If we have to do it overnight, like Javier Milei, that could have all kinds of unintended consequences. Industries would be set back to the Stone Age. It would have rippling effects into the United States. There would be massive shortages in the United States. They'd probably, for Canada to just collapse on its own, would probably destroy about 10% of the U.S. economy, which they can't afford, which could trigger something bigger there. Why? Because you got a tumor grafted onto a bigger tumor. That's it. But it gets worse. It gets worse because you have to do this while lowering your interest rates. Canada has lower interest rates than the Americans right now. That's everybody's going on how that's such a great thing. That's not a great thing. Low interest rates. We need interest rates around 15 to 19%. Period. If we want to ever have a reasonable chance at having any sort of purchasing power left in our dollar, right? Our dollar is dwindling. We've lost like 90 some odd percent of our purchasing power since the 1930s, right? And most of it's been lost since the 1970s to now by going off the gold standard, both Canada and the United States and other places around the world, right? But what I'm getting at too is that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that, like, Trump, has to find a way to balance the budget. How do you do that? Well, you got to come up with an actual balanced plan. Now, the problem you have in the States is the opposition won't support. Like right now, Trump has the House and the Senate, right? And he had this in his first 2 years, which would have been a lot easier to do this in the first 2 years back then in his first presidency, right? What he should have done right away was just focused on, instead of just fucking pandering to Israel for 2 years and wasting all that power that he had, what he should have done was, okay, we're going to do fiscal responsibility here. We're going to take the next 4 years to try to balance the budget. Here, we're going to start closing bases down in the Middle East. We're going to tell Israel, sorry, we can't afford you anymore. You fucking parasites. But he won't do that. Why? Because the Israelis pretty much control the U.S. Congress. 2/3 of the U.S. Congress is, or 2/5 or whatever, are dual citizenship Israelis. So yeah, they don't care what they do to the Americans. They don't care about what Israel's going to get out of it. But it doesn't matter. The U.S. goes down, Israel's done. So Israel's, I think Henry Kissinger, yes, hope he's burning in hell, but he wasn't a stupid man, and he was correct. He says, look, Israel's probably not going to be around in 10 to 15 years. It's just, he kind of knew the plan. These guys, they don't guess at stuff. They basically, like when George Soros says your economy is going to go down, he knows because he wields the power to do it. This man has destroyed so many economies. He's like public enemy number one, but he never goes, like most politicians, never get held to account. And he's not even a politician. He's a freaking NGO, right? All these NGOs that, okay, the Doge was going after some of the stuff. But Elon Musk, again, I'm not a fan of Elon Musk for most. I don't hate the man, but I don't trust the man. But he was correct that, like the United States has to get serious about balancing its budget to the point where Elon Musk said, look, people are giving me death threats. Like people high up are giving me death threats because it's like, if I take away their gravy train, you know what I mean? Like they're going to kill me. But it's what needs to be done. They're like, look, you're going to pay the piper one way or the other. Javier Milei said, okay, I'm going to take the chainsaw and I'm just going to cut the cancer out right away. And yes, it's going to have a lot of horrible, disastrous consequences. There will be no more free stuff for people. You're on your own, and money's going to be scarce. Good luck, But again, I don't know if Argentina balanced its budget. That I need to know. And if he did balance the budget and doesn't print any more money, Argentina will recover probably over a 10-year period. It will be a miserable 10 years for the poor Argentinians, right? But Argentina has an advantage. It has a homogeneous society without its borders wide open, right? So it's probably going to be fine. The United States still has the borders, illegals there. You got, 40 million illegals in the country. Oh, there's no such thing as illegal people. Yes, there is. If you were to be able to magically get those people to leave, right? 40 million people. That would open up a lot of the economy. It would have a lot of disastrous effects in some areas. For example, like on farms, right? You need to find those farmhands. But anybody left on welfare should be on a workfare program, because the workfare will do, it's not that it gives people something to do. Is what it does is it discourages people from going on welfare in the first place. Where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go on welfare. Look, I'm looking for a job. Give them 6 weeks to look for a job. Like, I don't understand how anybody. I live in the middle of nowhere, and I've been working. Okay, when I moved up here, I was on unemployment for like the first year, but after that, I've been working ever since. Like, it was 15 years of employment, self-employment. And I live in the middle of nowhere. So if I can find a job in the middle of nowhere and keep myself going, yes, I struggle. There's no doubt about that. There's no reason why people at the time in the city couldn't find a job. Now it's different because of temporary foreign workers. You bring in a guy from India, you give him a management position, he only hires Indians. And this is the way the corporations like it, because, again, temporary foreign worker program under the Trans-Pacific Partnership means you could bring in third world labor and give them third world wages, and there's nothing like Canadian labor laws can do about this. The only thing we can do is just suspend the damn program. Now, Carney is talking about cutting it back to 200,000 people from 450,000 people coming in a year. It's still too much. We need to see that going out. We need about 300,000 people per week to leave over the next, say, year, to be able to, that'd be a lot of people. That'd be about 50 million people leaving the country. And then we'd be okay. We have to go back to the levels of natural growth or decline. This is something that we're going to see in Japan. You're going to see, like, in about 30 years, a whole bunch of people just die off, right? Over the next 30 years. And in the next 10 years, we're going to see the majority of baby boomers dying off, right? And I know a lot of people have some bad stuff to say about the baby boomers. You have to understand, they were just propagandized a different way. They just got the accidental wins of the Ponzi schemes, like all the retirement and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they bought into something of the free stuff narrative as well, right? So they're like, oh, well, I'm going to get a pension. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get that. Okay, all I got to do is work hard. Okay, I don't fault them for that. They were lied to, right? And you say, well, yeah, but now we have to bring in all these immigrants to basically pay for the pensioners. Well, the immigrants coming in, most of them, 85% of them are not going to work for the first 3 years. They're not paying for nothing. And that means even if 45% of them did work, I can imagine this number's out of date now. This is 2015 numbers, 10 years old. I can imagine now it's probably more like 90% don't work, and maybe about 20 or 30% work after. Or if they are going to work, they're the temporary foreign workers that are underemployed, which means you're going to have a poverty class. You're working your way down from, you're destroying your middle class is what you're effectively doing, right? So you're working your way from a third world country into a borderline second world, third world country, or a second world, first world country, which Canada is still second world, first world. We still have the technology. So the United States is still, hanging on as a first world, second world country. But overnight, that could become complete disaster of like a fourth world country, which means everybody just starves to death and dies. You know what I mean? It's like, Reg, there is no category for fourth world. You are correct. That's how bad it is. Why? 38 trillion reasons for that. So Trump is coming to this realization that he's got to do something quick. So raising taxes through the tariff on everything didn't work. It didn't give him his tax breaks. It's not paying down the deficit. He's not balancing the budget. Now, Stephen Harper, okay, you guys know some people think I idolize him. I don't. I'm just saying this is where the bar was set. Stephen Harper inherited a lot of debt from Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin. But Paul Martin was starting to use the GST the way Brian Mulroney intended and was starting to lower the debt to GDP gradually, just coming down. And then Stephen Harper got in. The war at this point had already started. He joined onto the war. The debt spiked in Afghanistan, from the Afghanistan war and stuff like that, military spending, etc., etc. Those were the golden years for the Canadian military, is pretty much the Cold War or the Harper years, right? Which the Cold War was the best spending until the Liberals got in, because we had thousands, nearly 2,000 fighter jets at the time, 600 Voodoos, or nearly 700 Voodoos, nearly 700 CF-100s, 75 or whatever, 80 F-5s. We had another 350 starfighters. Canada was well defended. And then the Navy wasn't that much bigger, but, it was, I think our Navy's still bigger now, except for in World War II, we had the second largest Navy in the world. It was a lot of ships, right? But the point I'm making is that under Harper, it was 10 years, 7 out of those years were growth. Even if it was small growth, it was growth, right? Growth is growth. It's good. Right, but the reason why it was small growth, because the immigrants coming in were higher quality immigrants, meritocracy based, first come, first serve. And what ended up happening with them is that in order for them to have a job, they had to have a skill set, right? And we had the best. If you were going to have an immigration system, we had the best one in the world. I always thought there was too many people coming in. He took it from Jean Chrétien's 130,000 to 230,000 people coming in. That's like 2.3 million people a decade. That's just way too fast a growth, right? But that said, that's what Harper did. And then we were the last ones into the recession in 2008 and the first ones out, because we had, take it with a grain of salt, but the best banking regulations out there. Right? So maybe we weren't as competitive with low interest rates, but you have to understand these low interest rates are the reason why we're bailing out the bankers all the time. They're not making any fucking money. They're making quick money and whatever, and getting people hooked to debt easier. But for example, we didn't have the housing crisis that the Americans had, because the banking institutions wouldn't just loan out money to anybody with a pulse. That's not the case now. You know what I mean? Now it's like, oh, you just got off the boat, you don't have a job, you can't even speak English. Oh yeah, well, sure, we'll give you a loan for the house. Doesn't matter if you default, the taxpayer paid for it. We're buying houses for immigrants because, oh well, all the people that could buy houses have bought houses, and we got to keep the fucking housing industry going. So, which is you can't run your economy on housing industries, automotive industry. That's 1950. You can't do that now. You have to let that kind of collapse. Yes, it's going to hurt. People are going to lose jobs. But you have to have your driving economy. A strong economy from within is going to come from small business owners, not big corporations. The odd corporation, sure. But if you need to get a whole bunch of government capital to start a business, it's welfare. You know what I mean? So yes, build infrastructure, go in a little bit of debt for infrastructure. That's okay. But you got to be able to fiscally manage it, right? So the thing is that we know we can't make a deal with the United States. Trump might even completely destroy Kuzma because I think he's figured out what Carney seems to be doing. Maybe he's not. Maybe I'm giving him credit where credit's not due. But Carney basically, look, he's negotiated with Trump a little bit, right? And then he found a way to get Trump to capitulate by keeping 85% of the stuff under CUSMA or the USMCA tariff free, which means, okay, well, the little bit that we are tariffed, yeah, those sectors are going to take the hits. Auto industry, gas and oil, potash, and electricity, those type of things, right? The steel, aluminum stuff. But we're making other partnerships to kind of offset that trade, right? So yes, Canada lost 1,000 jobs, and again, it comes to the Joseph Stalin thing of, one man's death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic, right? So when 1,000 people lose their jobs, oh my God, Carney's the bad guy, he's the bad guy, he's the bad guy. But how many jobs did we gain? The Canadian economy is still growing. I mean, again, bouncing ball. But where's that growth? That's where the concern is. The growth is basically temporary foreign workers, right? That's not good. That is not good at all. Where in the U.S. economy, they just lost $35,000, a lot of it in the hospitality sector. And you're going to see that. Why? Because the Americans have basically lost their number one tourist, which was us, right? And then, of course, they've lost a lot of their number two tourists, which was Mexicans. I'm not talking about illegals. I'm talking about people vacationing. And a lot of Europeans are in solidarity with Canada and Mexico. So rather than vacationing in Florida, they're going to go to Cancun. you know what I mean? They're going to go someplace like that. Maybe they'll vacation in Venezuela just as solidarity there. I don't know what people are going to do, but Europeans are boycotting the United States the same way, not to the level Canadians are. And that's, again, it's not that I want to see this, but I don't see how there's a recovery from this, especially with patriotism on the rise in Canada, which is a good thing. Because then people are going to demand more Canadian and actually more Canada first kind of mentality. Where Canada is so vulnerable is really just being attached to the United States, right? Because Carney is not incorrect about, hey, we can give ourselves more than anybody can take away. It's just what he's not telling you is that it's going to take us 30 years to do this, though. you know what I mean? We're in not even finished year one of this disaster that we're in. That's been going on since 2008, and now we're in the beginning stages of a new phase of this disaster called Trump administration 2.0, right? So I don't know how Trump gets out of this other than because he's a capitalist, right? So he doesn't care about little businesses. He cares about the big corporations. That's all he panders to is his donors, which are big corporate donors, right? And all these donors need freaking bailouts. That's the problem. The same way George Bush did it, the same way Obama did it, the same way Biden did it, right? If you let these big corporations, which run the majority of the United States, collapse, the chaos will kill millions, right? But you're on that trajectory anyway. Now, one thing I said since 2008 or 2010 and particularly stuck to after 2012 when we didn't collapse the second time. Even Gerald Celente said, yeah, no, we were going to collapse in 2012, but we didn't. They found a new way, new ways to kick the can down the road. And I remember distinctively Gregory Mannarino saying, look, they're going to find a way to not pay the piper. They're going to find a way to kick the can down the road, stuff we haven't even dreamed of, right? And they're still doing it, right? So nobody wants to go to war. Like the younger generation, you can't fool them like you did the Vietnam generation or the World War II generation saying, hey, we have to go fight the axis of evil. Nobody wants to go and die on the shores of Iran. Nobody wants to go die on the, in the Bay of Pigs 2.0 in Venezuela. Nobody wants to hurt the Venezuelans. We don't care about the Venezuelans, but we don't really want them to die because we got to steal their gas and oil. Nobody wants to support the genocide of 100,000 people being killed by Israelis dropping U.S. democracy JDAMs on. These are U.S. bombs paid for by U.S. citizen tax dollars. One JDAM is about $20,000 to $30,000, $40,000, $60,000 a piece, right? That's how you get rid of some of your inflation. You take a bomb, you build it, okay? It keeps your industry going. You go and you blow something up. Right? War is a racket. A lot of people don't understand it, but it's a way to get rid of inflation. That's why, you stop the wars, inflation spikes, right? So you can see the problems that they're in. But why is the inflation spiking? Because your currency is becoming valueless. Why? Because you're printing too much. So, like, if Trump stops the printing press, the government collapses, right? It's, like, if you stop the war, inflation is going to spike, right? While inflation is spiking. If you can't get other countries, such as the only country in the world that can really buy debt from the United States is China. And China's pivoting away from that. Why? Because you're threatening to go to war with them. Like in the South, like, why the fuck are we in Southeast Asia? Well, if Japan and China wants to go to war again, or South Korea, whatever. Look, I have no illusions about how strong of the Chinese military is. That is one massive fucking juggernaut. And they will rule that region. But the Chinese track record of attacking other countries is not too good. Look what happened to the North Koreans in freaking Kim Jong Un sends is now manufacturing weapons for Russia, right? We know this. This is not new. This has been a thing for decades, but now they're really making. So we know Iranian scientists, nuclear scientists, have been working with the North Koreans for years and years and years, as well as Syrian scientists, right? So they have this. So weapon trades between Iran and North Korea has been going on for decades, right? But the thing is that the North Koreans don't have any modern battle experience. They have Soviet doctrine spin-off through China, Maoist, like Mao's military, which is completely outdated. You don't fight like that anymore. So they sent North Koreans to Ukraine, and they got their asses handed to them. But there's a second problem, and this is a problem nobody saw coming. Nobody saw coming. You take North Koreans, okay? You're going to go fight for the emperor, right? Kim Jong-un. But when you get to the battle line, and this is the depravity of North Korea, what's debilitating the North Koreans from fighting the most is not the Ukrainians. They can't take the Russians because the Russians are a superior force. They're holding their own the best they can against the Russians, and they're losing to the Russians, right? The media won't tell you this, but it's very clear if you look at a map. You can see the pretty much daily advances of the Russians. But the Russians are a first-rate military. Like the West, they're just a gas station with nukes. Everything. The Russians are so fucking adaptable, it's not funny. It's going to be terrifying fighting these guys. These guys have just basically, between them and the Ukrainians, have changed the battlefield. They looked at what happened between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and Azerbaijan getting basically support from Israel with these little kamikaze drones. Is like the Iranians caught some of them, captured some of them, and whatever, and they reverse engineered them, and this is what they're building predominantly for the Russians, but their versions of it. But it's changed warfare. NATO tactics don't work in drone warfare. They just do not. The Ukrainians are complaining about this, right? But the Ukrainians are about as good as modern Western soldiers can be. A lot of people don't, and they're still losing. And they're the best that they can be. It wouldn't matter if you gave every F-22 to the Ukrainians. They will still lose. Why? Because the Russian doctrine is better. That's it. So what happens when you throw North Koreans in there that think you're still going to fight a Soviet-style, just throw fucking human waves at everything? That doesn't work anymore. You can't do human waves anymore. Human waves it's so easy to kill people running at you. It would be the same as fighting modern warfare colonial style. Let's just line up in front of each other and shoot at each other. Gee, the side with the most men won. Wow, how did that happen, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's like the average life expectancy for a colonial soldier was 2 shots. Like literally, if you could get the second shot, if you got the second shot off, you were lucky, right? That's why the British, they would just march their men in overwhelming numbers towards the enemy line and not fire until they got right within bayonet charging length. And then they would shoot, slaughter everybody down, kill everybody with the bayonets while they were reloading, right? And that's why they kept winning battle after battle after battle. That was the technology at the time. But put that up against drone technology, or whatever. So the Germans came up with the Blitzkrieg. There's like a machine gun nest. You're going to take 8 guys or 6 guys. 2 guys are going to run on the side there. 2 guys are going to run here. One guy's going to try to come around. Maybe one guy's going to pin him down, right? And then you're going to rush the mound all at once from different directions. If you don't, you might lose 3 guys, but you'll capture the position. Then the Soviets took it to a whole new level, right? And then they taught this to the Vietnamese. Okay, if there's 200 guys in the U.S. base, you're going to send 5,000 guys running through the field with AKs. Geez, they're going to overrun the position. They're going to overrun the position so fast they're going to actually pass it. That was human wave technology at the time, right? You don't fight that now. So the number one thing debilitating North Korean soldiers right now is the access to porn. They can't handle it. They just can't handle it. Yeah, they're just like, it's such a problem. Men are getting executed for being caught with like devices with porn on it. Like but that's, like, again, that's what happens when you have a population that just doesn't know how to function in the world, right? Because they're so isolated. It's the hermit kingdom, right? That's what they call North Korea, the hermit kingdom. But let's get back to like getting out of the Southeast Asia. Like, think about when after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement was basically the United States. Okay, Britain was going to lose the superpower to the United States, right? They were going to hand the Brits were basically say, look, we're completely devastated. You bail us out, and in turn, we'll give you the torch to be the world's main hegemony, right? And in return, the Americans said, yes, we could do this, but we're going to take you one better. What we're going to do is, look, the war's over. We have all this manufacturing from the war. Basically, the United States, other than Pearl Harbor, didn't really take any hits on their soil. A couple of U-boats off the coast, and that's it. And most of them were sunk by us Canadians. So the U-boats really weren't going to do much damage to us anyway. But the thing is that what ended up happening is like the Americans were still left with this massive navy, the largest navy that ever existed, right? And they said, well, okay, we have a navy. It's a blue water navy. It can go all the way around the world and keep shipping lanes safe. In exchange, you do your trade in the birth of the petrodollar, right? It wasn't called the petrodollar at that time because the oil wasn't there yet. That would come a little bit later, but you get the idea. Everybody, instead of using the pound sterling and the British pound, it would transition from the British pound to the petrodollar. And then by the time you get into the late 50s, early 60s, you have the petrodollars pretty much born and established. And then by the 80s and 90s, it's the king dog, right? And now the thing is that there was a caveat to that, okay? The caveat was this, that stuff was made in America, right? So the debt level wasn't too bad, right? But then they started to export the manufacturing, like on NAFTA, right? And that means you weren't manufacturing your stuff. Now you were buying it from other countries. So at first you had everything made in Japan, after Japan was completely destroyed, right, by World War II. Then you had all this manufacturing, the really cheap Japanese currency. Hey, we can build stuff there really cheap. Okay, so they do this. Japan gets all this manufacturing from the United States. We start buying their junk. So when I was a kid, you pick something up, made in Japan, made in Canada, made in the United States. Maybe a few other countries. Well, sure. But then the Japanese currency starts getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Oh, they're too expensive now. How about made in Taiwan? We'll do that. Okay, Taiwan, yeah, okay, we'll take a kick at the can. We'll get a chunk of that chunk of that pie, the U.S. pie. Sure, we'd love to export you all kinds of stuff. Okay, so everything then is now made in Taiwan. Japan still taking on all this U.S. debt, right? Same way everybody else is. Um, well, same thing happens to Taiwan. Their currency gets too strong, they're no longer competitive. And then China says, "Oh, I've got deal for you. Look, we just third world country. We not do nothing. We got big military, but it's like 1920s, 1930s military. It not do any harm. We have a few nukes. That's all. You do business with us. The Japanese, no, their product, no good. No good. Us, number one. Okay? You do business with us. So, Taiwan, there is no Taiwan. No Taiwan. One China. One China. But you do business with China. So Chinese start doing business, okay. The currency's going up. Same thing. They're buying U.S. debt. They're doing all this stuff. Okay, they're on the same route that Japan and Taiwan already struck out on. Oh, what? What? The it what? It went down. What? Oh, the Chinese are manipulating the currency. Oh, smart bastards, right? And then while they're at it, it's like, okay, they take their military from like 1950s military to like what we see today. Basically, the West built Norenko. You know, like the Chinese military technology that's out there today, which is as it's as good as the American stuff. Maybe not quite as good, but look, the Chinese are building more stealth aircraft per year than the Americans are, almost like 2 to 1 or something like that. They can out manufacture anybody, and overnight too. Look, if you get into a war in the South Pacific and China has to start pumping out warships or corvettes, like frigates and corvettes and destroyers and aircraft carriers, they are building aircraft carriers at alarming rates. I think they're up to, they've got quite a few now. The J-20 stealth, the J-36, like all these, the J-50, like J-31, the J-30, it's like all these, the J-35, they got all these stealth aircraft coming up. Mind you, stolen U.S. technology, because that's the problem in a multicultural society. You get a lot of spies, right? Chinese don't have this problem as much. Although you get this odd South Korean spy in there, the odd Taiwanese spy in there. Yeah, but when they catch them, they kill them. You know what I mean? Like they don't, like Huawei, when they got that lady there, one of the Chinese tycoons. Yeah, we let her go. Yeah, we let her go. They would have fucking killed her. You know what I mean? If she was a spy, they would have killed her. They wouldn't have done that. But oh wow, human rights and both. Yeah. Anyway, so the Chinese have built themselves an empire of taking U.S. debt. They take the debt and they're like, we're going to build 20 mega cities the size of Toronto all over China. And what we're going to do is no one's going to live in this real estate. We're just going to build it all to the point where it's just sitting there empty. These mega cities are sitting there empty and dilapidating. But there's a caveat. I think what that is that they know they're going to war with the United States. So the United States is going to nuke the populated cities, not the unpopulated cities. So what I'm thinking is that's what the Chinese are preparing for. It's like, okay, yeah, well, whenever after the war, everybody's going to go move into these mega cities. They're already ready to go. And we'll have probably half the population, right? But they are in a massive position of power right now. The problem is that China is going to collapse right after the United States within a couple of years after it. Why? Because they lost their number one customer and the most wealthy people on the planet. And when the United States goes down, we're going to take, again, it'll probably take us Canadians with them, just because of we're going to lose half of our economy, or more. You know what I mean? Just in that, because of all, this is the problem with having your economy hooked to global trade. This is something that Carney hasn't quite figured out yet, that you got to start turning that economy inward. You got to start making the economy strong from within. You need to get it easier for smaller businesses to open up the economy, right? I'm not saying you have to completely deregulate everything. I'm not a free market capitalist. Free market capitalism is why we're sitting where we're at. Communism could never get us here. I get that. Yes, people have more wealth under capitalism than any other system, But the problem is when you're always in the race to the bottom, the cheapest stuff from the lowest bidder for everyday low prices, which leads to everyday low wages, puts everybody in poverty. The conservatives are always